Welcome to Beauty in the Real, a podcast for women walking through hard, holy, and everything in between seasons. I'm Rhonda, your host, a Jesus-loving wife and mom who alongside of you is learning to trust God and to find beauty in the middle of real life moments, messes, and meltdowns. Together, we're choosing to walk in faith even when we don't feel brave. So come along as we uncover hope and purpose woven into our real life stories and the stories of those around us. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so honored to be here with you. Don't you just love modern technology? So wherever you are, whether it's in your car or in your kitchen or nursing a baby or sitting in a hospital room, whatever your day looks like, I'm just really honored to be a small part of it through this little screen or through the earbud in your ear. Today, I want to share about loving others when it's hard. I was recently asked to come and share at a women's event at my church on this topic. And so I had spent some time really thinking through it, thinking through my own experience and the journeys that we've walked. And I feel like there are some important gems that I need to hold on to. And so I'm hoping that in sharing it with you, that you will be able to hold on to it as well. So if you don't know me, my name is Rhonda, and I am a caregiver full-time for my adult 23-year-old autistic son. And as you can imagine, we've had some dark days. We've gone through some seasons that have been really painful. We have gone through seasons of physical violence and property destruction and everything in between. And those times, they can really stretch you. They can challenge your faith. They can bring up questions that you never would have had at any other point in your life. And I have asked a lot of those questions. But through it all, I keep running back to Jesus. I keep running back to the Word of God and looking for the truth that I find there to bring clarity and to bring hope and to bring encouragement into my life and hopefully to yours as well. Loving someone when it's hard, and I don't mean like surface level hard, like I have a headache today and I don't want to make dinner. There are so many areas of our life that are challenging and that make it difficult to give of ourselves. And depending on your capacity and your situation and your circumstances, that can vary from day to day and from season to season and from person to person. But for all of us, we face these moments where we're asked to give more than we have. And yet we know that the Lord is calling us to do it. And so I want to speak to that today by sharing my own experience, by sharing the ways that sometimes those hard moments, that they're soul stretching and they cost us our dignity. They're exhausting and they're hard. And yet I am convinced that Jesus meets us in the middle of them. But before I dive in to that, I want to offer a really important disclaimer. As I mentioned, parts of my story and my relationship with my son include physical violence. They include property destruction. They include a lot of tears and fear. And it's been really hard. But I am able to kind of compartmentalize these behaviors as part of his disability. And that helps me to respond to him with grace and to keep giving. But what I want to say really clearly today is my story is not a permission slip for you to stay in an abusive, dangerous relationship. Loving like Jesus, it doesn't mean tolerating sinful behavior, and it doesn't mean putting yourself in harm's way. Sometimes the most loving thing that you can do is to leave and to get help for yourself and for your family. And so I just want to encourage anyone who's listening today as you hear parts of my story that do sound like an abusive relationship, when I talk about loving when it's hard, when I talk about laying down our life for the sake of Christ, I am not talking about submitting to abuse in those situations. Obviously, when we're dealing with someone with special needs, it's a little bit of a different scenario because, well, yes, Jonah has been incredibly hurtful towards me. He also depends on me for his everyday care. His physical health, his spiritual health, his mental health is all dependent on me. And so leaving, which is what I would normally tell myself or anyone else to do in a situation where they're being hurt, that doesn't apply here. And so I want to clarify that so that if you are someone who is in a situation that has similarities, but really is different, I want you to be wise. I want you to get the help that you need, and that might include leaving. And so I just felt like it was really important to say that so that we know exactly what we're talking about here. Okay, so as we move on, I have a couple of scriptures that I really am going to anchor what I talk about today. And the first one comes from Colossians 3:23 and 24, and it says, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ." And the next one is from Matthew 25:40. And I love this verse. If you go read the whole chapter, it talks about at the end of the age when Jesus is talking about separating the sheep from the goats. And he's talking about all the things that you did or didn't do for me. And the people respond, "But when did we do these things for you?" And his response to them is, "Truly I say to you, whatever you did to the least of these my brothers, you did for me." And so I want us to reflect for a moment on those words, everything and whatever. Do everything as unto the Lord, and whatever you do, you did for me. Everything and whatever. That seems to encompass an awful lot. And those two words, as I've mulled them over in my head in the middle of hard moments, they keep coming back to me, everything and whatever. And if I look at my current circumstances and go, this fits into everything or whatever, then it helps me to adjust my perspective on it. And so loving others is included in the everything and the whatever. This isn't metaphorical, right? Like, this is actual real life, boots on the ground, hands in the dirt, loving others. I'm not talking about this poetic idea. I'm talking about actually giving of ourselves in the middle of the everything and the whatever. And so as we talk about what that actually looks like, I think that you will be encouraged too. But I want to acknowledge the fact that it costs us something. It doesn't come for free. And sometimes the cost is high and sometimes the cost is painful. And so we need to learn how to run to the Lord, how to fill up our cup so that we can keep pouring out, keep giving, keep loving, even when it's really, really hard. So I want you to stop for just one moment and reflect. Who are you loving right now that is costing you something? Where are you pouring out unseen energy? Where are you giving in ways that no one is acknowledging and no one sees? I just want you to think about that for a moment. And while you think about that, I'm going to tell you a little story. This was, I believe, in the summer of 2021. And as usual, I was home taking care of my son. Now, this was still in the middle of what I call our dark days. We had a few years where it was really, really hard. And every day was a challenge. Every day was a mystery of what's going to happen today. Is it going to be easy? Is it going to be hard? What's going to get broke? Who's going to get hurt? And so it's in the middle of kind of this moment in time that one day Jonah gets up and demands, cut my toenails. Now, Jonah needs physical care. He is not able to do some of those things on his own. Jonah also has been diagnosed with general anxiety disorder and OCD. And that OCD, let me tell you, it is a taskmaster. And so he has very rigid expectations of how he wants things done and what he wants the finished product to look like. And so on this day, he demanded that I cut his toenails, as he has done many times. But at that moment, honestly, I just didn't want to. I had already spent most of my day jumping through hoops and dealing with Jonah's demands and his needs. And I was tired and I was frustrated. But I know that oftentimes telling him no just accelerates his dysregulation. And so I hurriedly grabbed the clippers and I plopped down next to him. I grabbed his feet in my hands and started cutting hurriedly. I rushed through the job, got it done, but it wasn't good enough. He rubs his finger along the edge of his toes and feels for any ridges or sharp corners. And so he immediately wanted it done again. Again, I was already a little bit at the end of my rope. And as he demanded it be done again, do you ever just want to have a mom fit? Like, I wanted to just scream and yell and throw myself on the floor and pound my fist to the ground. But it's not actually going to do any good. And so you just have to keep going. But that was the state of my mind and my emotions. But it was in that moment, you guys, that there was just a still, small, I won't even say voice, because it really was just a thought. But I know now that it was the presence and the power of the Holy Spirit, of Emmanuel, God with us. And the thought was this: how would I do this task if I were doing it for Jesus? And that question, it stopped me in my tracks. And I sat there and I looked at my son. And I looked at his giant man feet in my hands. And I had to truly reflect, how would I do this if this was the feet of Jesus in my hands? I immediately thought of the woman who brought a jar of perfume and anointed Jesus' feet, who cried over him with her tears and who dried it with her hair. And I thought about how she held the feet of Jesus in her hand and tenderly cared for them. I thought about how I have cried so many tears over this son of mine. And I was reminded about how God promises that he bottles every single one. And so I took his feet in my hands and I very carefully and precisely and slowly cut his toenails with perfect precision and gentleness. And I found that in that moment, the ordinary, mundane task that I did not want to do and that my son was not even grateful for, it became a holy moment of worship. It became an encounter with the living God right there in my living room. And I realized that it wasn't the task that was the problem. It was my heart. My heart needed to soften. My heart needed to change. My heart needed a new perspective. And that perspective came when I remembered those verses of whatever you do to these brothers of mine, you do for me. In everything that you do it as unto the Lord. This is our worship. This is our holy moment to encounter something that is so far beyond the task that we are faced with. I wish I could tell you that that moment just lasted forever, but it didn't. Within an hour, he was demanding something else, and I had to adjust my heart all over again. But it is a moment that I go back to over and over again. And it reminds me how to very quickly turn an everyday task into a holy moment. Do everything as unto the Lord. Whatever you do for the least of these. I come back to those verses over and over again and continually remind myself what true surrender is. Now, surrender is this very romantic sounding word that we throw around, and it just feels so holy and religious and beautiful. But the reality is that surrender, one, is hard. It is yielding ourself and giving up control into the hands of another. It is placing ourselves in the control of someone else. And the reality is it's often very, very painful. It collides with our nervous system, it collides with our pride, and it collides with our desire to be seen and to be appreciated. But I will tell you that after much practice of this art called surrender, I have learned a really important thing. Here's the secret. It's all in a matter of who you are surrendering to. Because what I've realized is in that moment, I am not surrendering to Jonah's will. Although from the outside, the critics might call it that and have. But in that moment, I'm not giving up my rights and my control to Jonah. I am surrendering to God. I am surrendering to the will of the Father who has placed me in this circumstance. I am surrendering to Jesus, who willingly laid down his life for me. And sometimes he asks me to lay down my life for Jonah. And so when I began to shift that mindset of giving myself up for Jonah versus giving myself up for Jesus, it makes surrender doable. And it makes us let go of the results of that surrender because I'm able to then entrust it to the Lord and know that whatever I give him, he is going to take it and make it into something beautiful. Now, this conversation is going to require just a little bit of biblical clarification. There's a verse that I've loved for most of my life. And here's what it says, Matthew 10:39, whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And then again in Matthew 16:24, Jesus tells his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, here's the clarification that I think we all need sometimes, especially as moms, especially as caregivers, especially as people who maybe are very sensitive to the needs of others. Losing your life for the sake of Jesus is not the same thing as losing your life to everyone else. Denying yourself for the sake of the cross is not the same as silencing yourself and your needs out of fear. It is not codependency. This is obedience to Christ. And if Christ is calling you to love and to serve someone who maybe is not appreciative, who maybe never says thank you, who maybe treats you in ways that are unkind, when we continue to serve in that moment, and when we learn to do it as unto the Lord, it is a whole different thing than denying ourselves constantly to keep the peace, to appease someone else's anger, to enable someone else's sin. These are not the things that God has called us to. God has called us to lay down our life for the sake of Christ, for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of loving others when it's hard. But we need to be careful, and we need to have discernment of where truly holy, beautiful, worshipful service ends, and where our own fear and self-protection and serving out of a place of resentment, of control, because we can look really holy on the outside by our actions, and on the inside we can be full of really ugly things. And so I think it's a really important distinction when we're talking about loving others and when we're talking about laying down our life, that we make it really clear to ourselves who we are actually serving in this moment, and that we make sure that we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus and on what he is calling us to. And sometimes what he is calling us to is to make a stand, is to say no, is to protect our own peace and our own rest. And so this isn't like a blanket, oh, just get out there and serve and give of yourself and pour everything out. No, we have to practice wisdom and discernment. And we have to realize that the way we can do this is trust. It's trusting in God. It's trusting that if he has put us in this circumstance, if he has called us to serve in this way, that he will meet our needs. He will see us. He will be the one that validates who we are. And as we do it unto the Lord, it will be beautiful in his kingdom, even if the person we are serving on earth never sees it and never appreciates it. The reality is that our heart matters more than our actions, because we can serve two different ways. We can do the right things. We can wash the dishes. We can care for the kids. We can be patient and kind when someone is mean and horrible. We can keep giving and giving and giving. And we can do it all in a way that is not holy, in a way that is not beautiful. And let me explain the difference. So again, in Matthew 23, and this is Jesus, and he's talking to the Pharisees, and they are the religious leaders of that day. And these guys have the rules down pat. Like, they are the one teaching the rules. They're the one holding everyone accountable to the rules. And they are really serious about looking like they are doing the right thing. And this is what Jesus had to say to them. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanliness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. I have spent a lot of my life in the good girl trap of, if I jump through the right hoops, if I put on the right behavior, if I say the right things, if I have a sweet smile, if I use kind words, then I will be a good girl. But the reality is that there have been so many times where on the outside, I have done the right thing. On the outside, I have served, I have been kind, I have laid down my life. And on the inside, I was bitter, I was resentful, I was hateful. And the Lord had to deal with my hypocrisy, the hypocrisy that no one else could see, that only Jesus, who looks beyond our whitewashed tombs and sees what's on the inside and calls us to true beauty, Beauty that doesn't just look good on the outside, but beauty that is truly worshipful, beauty that is truly filled with the fruit of the Holy Spirit, with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and self-control. These are the beautiful things that the Lord wants to bring out of us as we continually lay down our life and serve others. I learned only a couple years ago, that the way I could tell if I was doing something as unto the Lord was if I resented it later. So if I gave of myself or did something or served others and then found myself after the fact feeling a little resentful that I didn't get the recognition, that I didn't get acknowledged, that I didn't get thanked, or that I didn't get my service reciprocated in some way, that resentment became a really loud voice in my head that showed me I did not do that unto the Lord. I did that for me, or I did that for someone else, but I didn't do it unto the Lord. And so I began to learn what that looked like in my own heart, and realizing how unflattering it really is. And it began to help me as I walk into new opportunities to serve, to check my heart first. Why am I saying yes to this? Am I saying yes as unto the Lord? Am I doing the everything and the whatever for Jesus? Or do I have some ulterior motive? Now, there are lots of other really good motives to do something, to serve someone. And oftentimes we'll do that. And then we do get thanked or we get rewarded, and that feels good. But there are also a lot of times where we are called to do it just for Jesus, and where our reward might not be on this side of heaven. And so having discernment and learning to go into that day by day as you are serving those around you, doing it with a heart that is pure before the Lord is really, it's such a gift, and it's so beautiful. And then it becomes life-giving to them and to us. And it keeps that bitterness and resentment from growing in our hearts, because right behavior with the wrong heart, it just breeds resentment. It just makes us a whitewashed tomb. And I don't know about you, but I've spent enough years of my life being a whitewashed tomb, and I have no desire to be that anymore. So it's learning to serve from a place of worship. It's learning to recognize when we are serving from a place of fear or guilt or for our own image. But practically speaking, what does this actually look like? Because loving when it's hard, it first begins with a heart posture, but then that heart posture pours out. It pours out through our words. It pours out through our actions, through our attitudes. And oftentimes it begins on our knees, sometimes metaphorically speaking, and sometimes quite literally. I have had days, I've had moments where I have literally had to get on my knees and surrender to Jesus over and over and over again. I've had to say, this is too hard. I can't do it anymore. And then sit there and watch how he pours his strength into me. And when he does, I find that I'm able to be patient when I don't want to be. I find that I'm able to actually set healthy boundaries with love and not with resentment or anger. I'm able to clean up messes that no one's asked me to clean up and no one's going to thank me for when I'm done. I'm able to stay in situations that walking away would be easier and would honestly feel justified. I'm able to apologize when I need to. And I'm able to do those daily, mundane, sometimes difficult tasks as worship. But we can do all of this because God is worthy, not because the person that we are serving is deserving or is thankful or makes us feel any certain way, we can love others when it's hard because God is worthy of that. And it's what He's called us to do. And we can do it because He is El Roi. From the book of Genesis, there's a story of a slave woman who runs away, and the God of the universe meets her in the desert. And after their encounter, she calls him El Roi, which means the God who sees me. And I love that name for God because it reminds me every day that He truly is the God who sees me. He is the God who will reward. He is the God who will strengthen, who will walk with us, who will hold on to us in the midst of the hard moments. He is the one who will validate us when no one else does. And He is the one that will take us home to glory someday, where everything that we have done as unto the Lord will be rewarded. He's the one who sees our hidden tears, our invisible labor, the moments that no one else applauds. He's the one that calls us to this holy work and that sees it and walks with us through it. And yes, loving others when it's hard, it is holy work. And for many of us, it's not going to happen in the masses. It's going to happen often in the quiet places, behind closed doors, sometimes just for one person. Sometimes for one person who can't even speak, who can't even say thank you. And sometimes that can make our world feel really small. But it still matters. It still matters because the whatever and the everything that we are doing for the sake of Christ is building a kingdom. It's building a kingdom even when we can't see it, even when it feels like we're not a part of the bigger picture. If you are serving as unto the Lord, if you are giving to the least of these, if you are doing the everything and the whatever for the sake of Christ, then you are building His kingdom. And your reward in heaven will be great. And on this side of heaven, as we continue to pour out, He promises to fill us. He keeps filling us back up so that we can pour out over and over again. And I know that it's true because I have seen Him do it in my heart, in my strength, in my body, in my mind. I've seen Him do it after sleepless nights, after tears in the shower, after days of being hit, after my house being destroyed. I have seen the Lord fill my cup over and over and over again, and then ask me to pour it out. And I have found the rhythm of that to be one that is a beautiful song unto the Lord. And it's a song that I am learning to sing with my whole heart.